Hello, everyone. My name is Matthew Maynard, and today we're going to be talking about navigating the shadows, incident response, in the age of dark web tactics. I also go by Blackheart. I work for BJC Hospital here in St. Louis. I'm the incident response analyst, security level 3. I'm also an author, speaker, and a dark web researcher in my spare time. I've been in IT for over 19 years now, so 10 has been in IT, and going on 9 of it's been in Infosec. I have a career spanning various industries from marketing, insurance, banking, healthcare. I'm also a former ethical hacker where people paid me to breach their systems. I have a various amount of credentials. Also, like I said, I am a published author. I have articles for Hackin' 9 and Hacker Noon. I'm also an EC Council item writer for 2022, where I helped write the security incident handler certification for EC Squared. I'm also a member of InfraGard at the St. Louis chapter. It's that organization that works with intelligence with the FBI as far as gaining intelligence for cyber threats. I'm also a loving father, husband, and foodie. So in the era where cyber attacks are evolving, it's an unprecedented pace. The dark web has emerged as both a menace and a valuable tool. Shrouded in anonymity, this hidden part of the internet is a breeding ground for illicit activities from data breaches to identity theft to zero-day exploit sales to ransomware services. But however, in those shadowy corners lies a wealth of intelligence that can be leveraged to fortify cyber defenses. In this talk, we will explore the dual roles of dark web and modern cybersecurity, and we're going to delve into how incident responders can navigate this complex landscape to extract actionable intelligence as well as knowledge that can be applied to bolster our defenses in cyber attacks. So what we're going to dive into in this talk, we're going to be talking about, the top dark web tactics. There's a lot of tactics out there, but I kind of narrowed it down to at least 3 that we could talk about that I've seen that are prevalent today and that are affecting a lot of industries. So a lot of those are phishing-as-a-service and ransomware-as-a-service and malware-as-a-service. So for a lot of you who aren't familiar with some of these tactics, phishing-as-a-service is basically for the phishing kits that are sold on the dark web. They're pre-configured for the less technical people who are interested in just making money. They come with a dozen templates and offer a range of services. Ransomware-as-a-service, as well as is basically kind of like phishing-as-a-service, but it's a malicious adaptation of that business model. So it's subscription based, as most of you know, and it sells or rents, pre-developed ransomware tools to buyers. Also, those who are low technical and don't really understand some things but want to make money. Malware as a service is also what we'll be talking about. It's a business model like everything else, and it provides malicious software to related infrastructures for a fee. So the first one that we're going to dive into is phishing-as-a-service. And in this case, we're going to be talking about adversary in the middle. And it's one of those tactics where the perpetrator positions themselves into a conversation between 2 parties. So you have 2 users, 2 devices, or a user, an application, or a server. So all that communication is going on through the attacker. So adversary in the middle is the official term that MITRE uses. And the examples of that for those who have questions, Evilginx is one, Melisca is another, Marina and EvilProxy are the examples that we're going to use for this discussion. So EvilProxy is a service that's available on the dark web. This is actually an article or a sales pitch for somebody on the dark web where you can actually rent the service, as we've talked about, and you can pay for, I think 400 right now is a rate for a lot of them, but they list in different categories as far as like if you're doing Dropbox, how much it's going to be, GitHub, LinkedIn, Facebook. Microsoft O365 is on there as well. You can get bot protection, virtualization detection, automation detection. For extra, you can be a proxy manager for a rotation and geo-adaptation and a domain manager. And you can also get Telegram notifications, to keep you up to date on all the campaigns that you're running. So EvilProxy is, a platform that's emerged lately that's shown a lot of promise. So promise stealing authentications tokens to bypassing MFA, which is a really big one right now because a lot of us have it in place. So it works for like Apple, Google, Facebook, Microsoft, Twitter. I mean, you name it. As told previously, it's sold at $400 a month, and low-skilled actors can actually use it to set up the accounts. So it's simple to deploy, offers detailed instructional videos, which is great, tutorials, user-friendly graphical interface, and rich selection, which is more bang for your buck. In a lot of cases, you're going to need a bigger boat for this one. So the overview of how EvilProxy works is, the user gets, it all starts with the phishing link, the way to get you to engage in it. So basically they get the link and then the user puts in their password into the phishing site, and then the phishing site proxies request to that actual website. And then the website returns the MFA screen where the phishing site proxies the MFA screen to the user. And then the user puts in the additional authentication through the site. The phishing site proxies a request to the actual website. The website returns a session cookie. The phishing site redirects the user to another page. So it's really seamless, and a lot of times when that takes effect, whenever this type of attack is done. So knowing a lot of that, as far as like adversary in the middle, EvilProxy, it kind of leads us to a certain point. So like seeing a lot of that now, but what can you do for detection for EvilProxy? I'm going to assume a lot of our users out there right now have Office 365, and there is some information on it as far as like all messages, malicious links. A user clicked a malicious link. These are, when you get those, if you're in incident response, you're looking through these logs. A lot of times it can be useful, and a lot of times too, but it's there. So, detection of certain patterns. But what you're really going to be looking for is if somebody gets in, you're going to be seeing manipulation of your inbox rules. You're going to see impossible travel, activity from an infrequent country, suspicious email deletion, but also the anomalous token and unfamiliar sign-in properties. A lot of that can come into conjunction as far as being mixed together, so that way you can actually start seeing a lot of those attacks and suspicious behavior when you start to investigate. There's also hunting queries for SentinelOne for those of us who do have it. There's analytic templates that SentinelOne can use for, business email compromise activities as well. Also analyzing EvilProxy, there's a few default settings, and I know like default settings, but a lot of people who like to attack, sometimes it's roll with the punches and don't really set anything up. So yeah, there's a lot of settings. You can even do showdown searches for this stuff, and you can still see the EvilProxy stuff that's exposed to the internet. But this is like the default settings that are used of .pro, .cloud, .ioo, login live, rproxy.io, and so on and so forth for those particular IOCs. But I'm a purple teamer too, so one of the things that I really enjoy is getting my hands dirty. I mean, we have to take that step to think like a bad guy. We have to take that steps to think like a hacker. So EvilProxy, or Evilginx, GoPhish. There's already a GoPhish platform, but Evilginx GoPhish works in combination, works together. So in this case, you're going to use Evilginx GoPhish to do a lot of these attacks already. So you can use what's already been known and help detect that. But when you use this tool, it's actually going to give you the advantage because you're going to see this stuff in real time. It takes a little bit to set up, but once you do, you're going to see you're able to do your own phishing campaigns to start looking for this stuff. One of the also great features of it is the SMS campaign setup. So I know I didn't get phishing right. That's not phishing. It's smishing for text messages, but we all get that. Like we do the text messages, and people get those. Send me gift cards for like $1,000 or $5,000 or whatever. And it's also a way that we can kind of help test our employees stuff and also kind of keep us up to date in those tactics as well. That's a very useful tool, and I highly recommend it. We go into Malware-As-A-Service as our second one. And when it comes to Malware-As-A-Service, it's an attack in which cybercriminals offer deployment services to other hackers or malicious actors on the internet. The reason why I went this route was because ransomware is 58%. You're going to hear a lot of stuff on ransomware, and everybody knows about ransomware. But one of the things that is starting to make a really big break right now is the info stealers, which make up 24% of what's going on right now. And info stealers are a very big item that's happening right now. One such case is RedLine Stealer. And what RedLine Stealer is an information stealer that it can be downloaded in a lot of your corrupted applications. Maybe it could be FileZilla. A lot of us are using it. Discord. I mean, we're using it right now to communicate. Steam, Telegram, VPN clients, and so on and so forth. The stealer implements the following actions that extend to like download RUMP, download EPX, open link, C2 server, and via SOAP messages. Just to kind of put it in context, this is an article that was written about stealer slugs behind Redline, info stealer that kind of lead to ransomware. So we kind of we always look at ransomware at one case too, but info stealers are the ones that are actually the very beginning of that stage that kind of usher in things for ransomware. Because we look at ransomware from a certain point because ransomware is actually at the very end of the attack. Information stealers are the very beginning. They're the ones that are gathering the intelligence from the the victim. So redline detection is an interesting thing. So it's like there are ways to detect it. It's very difficult, but there are some things that we can kind of get used to. Your PowerShell commands are going to be a big one, but we should be looking for malicious PowerShell commands in general. So it kind of ushers into the idea of catching a lot of these info sealers as they come in. They create, Windows Defender, exclusions. They're also the malware persistence as far as creating scheduled tasks. That's also something we should be looking at in our environments because anytime a scheduled task that pops up that runs, SC for a minute or a month or, I mean, it's a lot of work. I do understand that you get a lot of false positives, but, when we start to look at these things more and more, we get better and we can actually start weeding out a lot of the false positives. There's triage is a wonderful place too, where you can start looking at malware samples. I wouldn't recommend downloading in the samples on your internal network. Um, but you can also download a PDF. You could do a PCAP. A lot of that stuff I'd probably recommend doing off network too. But it gets you involved. It gets you looking at a lot of the intrastealer behavior, so you can fortify your defenses better. Another one is a very popular one is Raccoon Stealer. It's the second one running right now. This article was from 2022, but they had an article for 2024 talking about how it's making its way right now. A lot of us have already heard it, but it's very simple. It's got a wonderful GUI interface where you can actually go through and do settings, basically tying to whatever you want to do for that attack. Another article that we have here is, information stealers are stealing data stored in applications such as web browsers. So if you're at home and you have any information saved in your web browser that ties you to the company, it's a great way to steal your information. There's a lot of articles about that, people saving corporate information in their, browser-based lockers or whatever. But basically talk about some prominent information stealing families such as Redline, Raccoon, and so on and so forth that steal and infect devices. So there's a few things we can do for like raccoon stealer detection. Is very much like what we've always talked about. There are IOCs that are available that people are looking into it and trying to figure out more about it. There's also where there's a lot of places where you can go through the analysis, the first look, and it gets really good into like reverse engineering. So it does take a little bit to get into if you don't have a background in reverse engineering, but there is information out there as far as like detecting more of the information stealer realm. So the one part we're going to talk about is Ransomware-As-A-Service because it's a very big one. We all have heard of ransomware. We all know about it. And if you don't, you're going to find out about it very soon. One of the things about Ransomware-As-A-Service is you have like LockBit, BlackCat, Hive, and Dharma. And basically what they are is just pretty much the same thing that we're talking about. It's just they are services that are available on the dark web to low-end techie people or those who are looking to make a quick buck. It really just kind of depends on who's wanting to do that. We all know pretty much about what's going on as far as like different facilities that get hit with it all the time. I myself am in healthcare. So ransomware is always the talk of every conference you can think of or every internal conversation with, CEOs and COs or, C-suite executives and alike. And it's always something that's prominent that we should talk about. So, we have a lot of extortion going on from, these ransomwares, a group people just taking the information, either encrypting the data or getting in and exfiltrating the data. And it's going on and on for more industries other than healthcare. But, I use Change Healthcare in this case because it's one that we've been talking about for a very, very long time. And they're one out of many that were hit with a service that was pretty much, ransomware as a service. So when we move into like ransomware detection, there's a lot of solutions that are available, like our EDRs and just, I mean, you name it. There's stuff out there that helps with it. But I always put this in every slide and I always talk to everybody and I always say the same thing when it comes to ransomware. I mean, you're only as good as your business continuity plan and your disaster recovery plan. And those are things that are very, very important because they are overlooked. Because one aspect that I kind of feel that we kind of shy away from is your recovery time objective and your recovery point objective. And what recovery time objective is the maximum acceptable amount of time for restoring a network application and regaining access to data after an unplanned disruption. The other is the defined as a maximum amount of data are measured by time. So it can be lost after recovery, former disaster or failure, or data is lost. And I don't think a lot of us are doing that. I mean, actually, I'm just going to say I don't think any of us are doing that because you get that compliance check mark for the year and then we move on. And then, ransomware as a service comes in or just ransomware in general, and it takes a company down and it takes weeks, it takes months, it takes a very long time. to get stood up. But if you pass the regulatory standard and they said, sure, and you're good to go, then why does it take so long to spin up, your lost data? So, there's a lot to learn from that. Your offsite backups are great, but do you truly know that they are tested? And a lot of people say absolutely. Are they tested under a certain circumstance as if, how long does it take you to spin up your data? How long does it take you to recover? Because, you know, minutes can mean a lot, hours can mean a lot, and weeks can mean a lot. So with ransomware, detection methodologies, the way that I look at it is, pretty basic. I know everybody has their own ideas when it comes to ransomware techniques and everything else. But one thing that I have been blessed to be is an ethical hacker at one point in my life where people paid me to get into their infrastructure, at least pose as a bad guy, and then teach what can be done to better help that. And the way I see it is that it's kind of a pretty simplistic approach. Is that when an adversary is in your network, they don't know where they are right away. They don't know where they are. So there's going to be some things that they're looking for. And one thing that they're going to be looking for is they're going to be looking for like network shares. They're going to be looking for information that you have that is stored because that's what's important. So if you have shares that are full of PHI or PII or sensitive information, that's what I want. So you're going to be seeing scanning traffic. You're going to be seeing NetScan or ShareFinder to find those because that's very, very important for them. You're also going to see the detection of scanning tools like OpenVOS or Nessus. I mean, we all use those tools and they should be set up in your infrastructure or either whitelisted or, one day you see a device or have something pop up that says, well, that's strange. That's not on the list. Why is this doing carrying a lot of bandwidth to a lot of these devices? Like it's doing a scan, but that's not in our scope. This is weird. Then you investigate, you kind of figure out more. And it's like, okay, well, this is a rogue device. This isn't something we have planned. I mean, if somebody in IT is running a network scanner, that's great. But if Nancy in accounting is running something, that's not normal. There shouldn't be anybody on that asset list who has anything that should be scanning. Other cases like Nmap and so on and so forth. As I said before, the detection of malicious PowerShell scripts. There's a lot of uses for PowerShell from an IT functionality, and it's something that we use a lot of. But we really want to look for a lot of the malicious PowerShell commands and functions, and command lines. We'd say like the download string and download file are really important. The invoke expression ones are really prominent. There's stuff that pops up in a lot of the data breaches where an adversary is in and they need to figure out how they can get access to their tools. They need to figure out how they can get access to that executable that's going to run on your system to encrypt all your data. Because, when they're in, they have to have access out to get tools. And, they're not always built in when they get into your system. So they have to talk a lot to be getting that stuff, as well as the invoke expression whenever you're using PowerShell too, because they got to communicate out because once again, they don't really know where they are and they're building to get to where they are. And as I stated before, is that we only focus on the encryption a lot of times because that's where, we're trying to save our data and try and save all this information. But the aspect is that's, we don't catch the legwork before, the encryption takes place. And that's very prominent because that's where you're going to catch things. WMI can be used as well as for scanning and PowerShell scripts, profile injection. If the attacker has write privileges to PowerShell profiles on a remote computer, I mean, that's kind of an issue as well. And you have other tools as far as like task scheduler, looking for those malicious tasks that are, scheduled tasks that aren't normal. As far as like one being ran in a minute, one being ran in a month, those weird ones, those one-offs, as well as using, PsExec is a big one. I know there's a lot of companies that actually blacklist that from their industry because they don't really want people running PsExec, but that's a real big one. You see a lot of it being popped up as well. And Mimikatz, but everybody knows that one. This is it pops up on your system. A lot of EDR systems are going to catch that as well. The one thing that I feel kind of helps too for me, and it's something that I do work with, is that the quick execution of a series of suspicious commands. It sounds like a kid's book, but but in this case, the reason like for this command I thought was like very, very, it's written, it's going to create a lot of noise. So you just kind of have to like work with it a little bit because we put it in text of if a cyber criminal is on your network and they need to somehow figure out where they are. And when I was a pen tester, you would get online and you would get in, but you either had to like scan through your networks, or you had to look for certain things, or there was a series of commands that had to be ran to figure out where I was or what I was doing. And it's pretty much the same case when it comes to cyber criminals getting on your network. They're going to make some noise. I mean, it's just trying to look for the right ways. Like if there's somebody using robocopy on your network with conjunction of secure task or copy, like any of these certain commands that are run within, like, I think this is a set of like 5 in a 5 minute time frame or something like that. And it ties a lot of stuff together, but a lot of our common things that you would see for somebody's either trying to exfiltrate data or somebody's trying to move laterally in your network. And it does create, whenever you run it, there are false positives that you have to work through, but keep in mind, a lot of it's just working through it and trying to figure out what's going on, because most of the commands in here shouldn't really be ran by just, average people. A lot of times it's going to be popping up in your IT area and stuff like that, but you'd be surprised what you can find. And the last part of it was exfiltration locations used by cyber criminals. This is actually part of some of the research I do outside of work that I do, is that, you know, threat or cyber criminals, they actually have to move your data out to get it, because that's the objective. The objective is to get as much data as they can and get it out, because that's the payday, that's the money. And a lot of cases, in this we want to look at means of exfiltration. That's where like your net flows come in handy. That's where a lot of the traffic monitoring comes in handy. There's some stories about cyber criminals exfiltrating 6 terabytes of data, and then you never hear anything else about it. Everybody stays quiet. It's like, well, how do you exfiltrate 6 terabytes? I can't even download a version of Kali Linux on my computer hooked up to the VPN without pulling some serious bandwidth. But to move 6 terabytes of data outside of a network, and nobody says anything, or there's no monitoring in place. And those are usually the cases that we look at, because when they're moving it, this is actually a page from one of the sites that I actually monitor. And, it's like Dropbox, QAX, Metafire. I mean, Google Drive's even on there. I mean, how many companies right now actually have access to Google Drive externally? Or Pixel Drain and Kraken files. They keep coming, and there's more and more of them, because when they move that data out, it's not the dark web marketplaces that house the data. They're used as a communication point to get that conversation going. And 9 out of 10 times, your stolen data is sitting in one of these places, or at least a few of them. And that's kind of how they store your information. So it's just kind of food for thought. The best way that, monitoring your network for exfiltration methods and the techniques that are used are one of the great ways that you're going to be able to find something that's going on. Your quick execution of suspicious commands, exfiltration of shared data. I mean, the list is just going to keep going on from there. But those are usually some of the tactics that I would use for, ransomware as a service. And that brings us to the Q&A. If anybody has any questions, I'd be more than happy to answer them for you.
The one thing that always drives me nuts, Matthew, is, especially from a forensic side, that workstations are great and have SRUM data.
Mm.
No freaking servers do, though. I'm like, and that's really where a lot of the data exfiltration comes in from. I got my link data and I got this other data, but I don't have any SRUM data. I can't tell you, where exactly it was exfiltrated to. All right. So we can see
Yeah.
access, but
Yeah,
I,
that's it.
I
It's that communication. It's like, as far as where it is, and just bringing that to light more and more every day. Because it's just
yeah,
I don't know where the communication break goes between C-suite executives and what's data. And a lot of times, a lot of people don't even know where their data is.
yeah, that's another problem.
Yeah.
You're going through the forensics. What's this IP? Oh, great.
Yeah, it's one of our vendors, but they don't mess with our data. Oh wait, they do. Sorry.
So, question came in: what Windows logs should be baselined or non-negotiable to be logged?
Yeah, I mean, that's a good question. So a lot of it too. I mean, we pretty much have everything. Like, we do the security logs, but we're going to do the application logs. I think Sysmon is a great place. I think I have a lot of
Mhm.
that installed on devices, so it's good if you can collect data, and it's free. I feel really hard. I mean, as far as not using anything that is free and available to you. There's also so many configs out there. Like Swift on Security has multiple configs you can use to catch a
Yep.
lot of these threats. But also having an idea of how you can upgrade those, or update those configs in your environment too, to kind of help you. But the more logs, the merrier. A lot of it too is just playing with it and seeing what you can see and what you can get. But I'm always going to go buy one of those, send everything.
Yeah, a lot of times we go in and we'll get all the Windows event logs.
Hmm.
Because a lot of times you'll find that rogue IIS server or something like that,
Hmm.
and you'll only see that when you actually look at the event logs. Like, oh, now let me go back and get the IIS logs. But
Hmm.
if you're only looking at a couple of the logs, you're gonna miss it. The other one is the PowerShell console host log. So
Yep.
you got to
Yep.
actually go into each user's app data folder. It's a string. I can't remember the full thing off the top of my head, so I don't want to lie and butcher something. But yeah, the console history log for PowerShell is definitely a good one as well to grab.
Yeah, absolutely.
What are some good FAQ tools links? JP, I'm going to assume that you're going to want to you're talking about DFIR. If you don't have a public follow myself, follow Matthew, follow everybody that's on here that's been talking, because it's been a wealth of knowledge. But I would also recommend you go look at Eric Capiano. He does a lot of great research. It's not a part of today. I would also recommend go look at 13 Cubed, which is also not a part of this one, but both of those are also a wealth of information. So literally follow the other forensic firms,
Yep.
see what information they're putting out, and that we overshare sometimes too much. So
Yeah.
even if you have a question, it's like you see somebody else post something, one of these people, like ping myself, ping
Yeah.
Matthew, ping other people on LinkedIn and some of these other platforms and say, hey, um, what's your thoughts on this? And we'll respond. We'll give our 2 cents on it. We're happy to.
Yeah. Yep. Absolutely.